Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interviewed Dufflyn Lammers. Dufflyn's originally from the States, but she now calls Paris home. She's an American love coach in Paris, and she's also an actress, writer, and poet. We talk about the connection between creativity and love. So welcome to the show, Dufflyn. How are you today?
Hey, Crystal. I'm awesome. How are you?
It was so lovely to meet you at the Inspiral event the other night, and then talking about your story, being a love coach, a writer. I can't wait to jump into all of it. But I always like to go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about where you're from and what brought you to Paris.
Yes. I'm originally from Palo Alto, California. So I grew up there. I spent about 15 years in Los Angeles. So that's where I was living when I came to Paris for a 3-month stint, a summer, and I met a handsome Frenchman. We were back and forth for about 3 years. And then finally someone had to make the move. So I decided to take one for the team. And here I am in Paris.
Doesn't seem like such a bad trade-off, like not so bad. The long distance thing can be rough though. And so you were living in California. You were acting, I saw as well. You've done shows, you write. Tell us more about all these creative things you're doing.
Yeah, I started off, I was always interested in poetry ever since I was like 12, 13 years old. We write those poems about the boys we have crushes on. And for me, in many ways, that hasn't changed at all. But I started off doing poetry slam in college, and in order to try to get better at that, I took some acting classes, and then I fell in love with acting. So I moved to Los Angeles and did some TV, some film, some commercials and things like that. And so I did that for about 15 years, and I really enjoyed it. I think one of the best things that I did was Russell Simmons' Deaf Poetry on HBO, because I got to combine everything I loved. It was a poem about love, about dating, called Single Life. And I was performing for a huge crowd on Broadway, but also, it was something that I had written. So it kind of combined all of my different skills, and, did some tours of colleges and things like that. And then when I came to Paris, I was working on my first memoir, which is a memoir about my mother. And my agent wasn't able to sell it. So I ended up turning that into a one-woman show. And now I'm at work on my second memoir, which is about falling in love and moving to Paris.
I love it. And talk a little bit more about your one-woman show. Like, what was that about exactly? I know you mentioned your mother, but talk more about that.
It's called Discovered. I presented it on the West End in London and also the Hollywood Fringe. And it's really about my journey into recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, parallel to my journey as an actor, parallel to my relationship with my mother, which was fraught, which was difficult. She left me and my dad when I was about 4 years old to move to Hollywood to chase her dreams of becoming rich and famous. And so all of it kind of comes together, and and there are just sort of these different parallels around that. I called it Discovered because I think the thing is, we all think we're going to be discovered by someone outside ourselves. And in the end, the person who really needs to discover you is you.
I love that. That's so true. And I'm sure that relates back to a lot of what you're doing with, you also are our love coach in Paris. So talk about your transition from writing poetry and things like that into helping other people find love.
The funny thing is, whenever I write, whenever I perform, and this was true whether I was performing my own words or someone else's, nobody wanted to listen to me talk about politics or like the Middle East, which I was, dismayed about. But when I started talking about sex, love, and dating, people were like, "Oh, wait, what's that?" And I got a lot more response and engagement, and I started talking to a lot of the women around me about their relationships, and it seemed like a lot of us were really struggling. And I had been giving advice to my women friends for years. When I was in high school, they would say, "Talk to Dr. Duffy," because they called me Duffy when I was a kid. And, so it was something I already knew and already did. And at a certain point, I became really interested because my journey, I quit drinking my junior year of college when I was 23 years old. About 8 years later, I quit drugs as well because they had taken the place of the drinking. And when there were no more substances for me to turn to, I quickly found that the substances were replaced by people, primarily attractive men, preferably wearing a cowboy hat. And so, I started writing about that, and I also began doing a lot of reading and a lot of retraining, and because I needed to help myself, and in helping myself, I ended up helping others.
I think that's really beautiful. And it's so funny because when you think about music from the past, from today, like the most popular songs are always about love as well. Like, so this topic of love, we can all relate to it. We all struggle. We all want to find it. Talk about some common issues like the people you help have when it comes to finding love and how you help them.
Most of the women that I work with, and I work primarily with women, just that's my jam. Most of them are struggling with one of three problems. So either they're going through a breakup or a divorce, they're single and they don't want to be, or they're in a relationship and they don't know if they should stay or go. So those are the three biggest problems. What I have come to understand is that underneath that, generally, what they're really struggling with is attachment wounding. And that can look a number of different ways. So that's really where I'm coming from. And what I do is the first 90 days that I'm working with someone is just about stabilization. It's like, let's just quit this stuff that's killing you the fastest, and let's cut that out and get stabilized and get a plan. So that's what I do with them in that first 90 days, is just creating a plan for stabilization. And then from there, we can do the deeper attachment repair work, which is, I love talking about that. I do something called Ideal Parent Figure Protocol, which is a meditation intervention for attachment repair, which is super new and cutting edge and really effective.
Yeah, talk more about that. I was reading about that on your website. So it's like a meditation. Like, are you repeating certain words? Are you focusing on certain things?
It's also, what the funny thing about it is, Crystal, it's super creative, right? Because what my mentor in this Ideal Parent Figure Protocol, the person who created it, his name was Daniel P. Brown, and I had the privilege of working with him before he passed. What he used to say is, imagination creates new possibilities. So actually, it's our creative energy and our creative life force that we're calling on to do this attachment repair. And so what I'm doing is, first we do an assessment to see exactly what your attachment strategy is, because people think that like you can just go on some quiz online and figure out your attachment strategy, or you read a book and now you know. And that's not true. Most of the time that's not true, because self-assessment is not reliable. So we do a clinical assessment, and I have somebody that I send people to for that. Then when it comes back, I have some really precise information to be able to rely on. So what we're doing then is we're going into a guided meditation. Essentially, I'm there facilitating and guiding the meditation. And I'm prompting you to imagine a set of ideal parents completely different from the ones you grew up with. This is not a replacement the experience you had in childhood. It's not a correction for the experience you had in childhood. We're creating brand new entries into your perceptual database. So what happens is that you come away with a new internal working model created by your imagination.
Wow. Because do you think that a lot of people that have problems with dating or divorce or anybody's going through this kind of love stuff, it all comes back to us and doing the self work?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Because the truth, like, you can't change anybody else anyway. And it's frustrating to keep trying. It's just like banging your head against a wall again and again and again. And you're like, wait, why am I dating the same guy with a different face every time? Maybe I need to look in the mirror instead of, pointing the fingers at them. And that's actually in the end so empowering, right? Because that's where you do have the power, is to change yourself.
Definitely. And I think, like, especially in today's world, I mean, all my friends are always complaining about this, how it feels harder to date now because of the apps and everyone's just so interchangeable. Like, do you feel that way? Do you think people have changed? Do you think like it is harder, or do you think it's always the same?
I understand what people are talking about when it comes to online dating, because there's this sort of commodification of human beings when it comes to that. I feel like part of what's so difficult about that is that when you're dating online, you begin to sort of market yourself, right? And you're presenting yourself in this certain way, and it feels disingenuous. It doesn't feel authentic. And that's the opposite of what secure attachment looks like. So yes, I agree with the movement back to meeting in real life. And at the same time, part of what apps do is they clarify things for people. Like, there's no getting stuck in the friend zone. I met you on an app, it avoids certain initial conversations that can be really sticky and uncomfortable. So I think people have just gotten so used to it that they forget what it was like before, or maybe they're young and they don't know what it was like before. Ultimately, what I advise is a combination of both, right? If you're only dating on apps, yeah, you're going to get burnt out. You need to do a little bit of both. And that's what I find really works best for people.
And a lot of this comes back to the way we think, the way we perceive the world, ourselves, other people. So what are 3 things that people can do today to shift the way they think?
I think one of the most important things, and I say this to myself as much as I do to anyone, is to remember to play. And this is true for every area of our lives, whether it's about relationships or work or creativity. When we play, we are our most authentic selves. And what I believe is, like, what I owe the world is the same as what I owe myself. It's just to be who I am, which is easier said than done. And when I play, I remember who I am, right? Because I'm no longer trying too hard. I'm no longer trying at all. I'm just being. So I think remember to play is probably number one. In terms of being mindful, different people have different practices, and what works for one person is not what works for somebody else when it comes to mindfulness. For me, meditation has changed my life as much as anything else ever has. I've had a daily meditation practice for the last 18 years. And putting myself first in that way. So I get up in the morning and I meditate before I do anything else, before I talk to anyone, before I look at the phone, before I have a cup of coffee, I meditate. And that for me is an act of self-love, but it's also, my meditation teacher used to describe it as like, you have a jar with water and sand in it, and you walk around in the world and that jar gets all shaken up. And when you sit down to meditate, all the sand sinks to the bottom and you get clarity. And that's what I need, right? So I would say number 2 is meditation. My experience, the way I work with people, I try to work from the outside in and the inside out. So the inside out is that IPF part, but the outside in is the plan. And that's what we do when we do stabilization. And that's also what I feel like I do when I'm writing. So this is about mentalizing. This is about thinking, right? And putting the focus on yourself, but also just having a focus, right? Because there's so much noise out there. Like you're listening to TikTok and you're watching TV and you're on your phone and you're having a conversation and there's so much noise. Like to sit down and make a plan for yourself and get really clear about, okay, these are my bottom lines around, what I do and don't do. This is my self-care. This is my purpose. This is my values. This is my vision, which is usually one of the first things that I do with clients in group programs and one-on-one is something I call the personal empowerment plan. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But I think just getting really clear with yourself and having a plan, whether it's for your day or your week or your month or your life.
Yeah, I think that's great advice because I think especially in today's world, we can all get really scattered. So it's so important to know what you want and then make a plan to get there. And I think a lot of us get overwhelmed with that too because we feel like, oh, we have so much to do. And how do we even get started? So what would you say to those people?
I think when you're stuck, the micro yes is a really, really wonderful tool. What's the smallest first yes that you can, when you're stuck, I think the micro yes is a really wonderful tool. So what's the first tiny, tiny step that you can say yes to? So it might just be get off the couch, right? It might just be get off the couch and take a walk. That might be your micro yes. For somebody else, it might just be to sit up. For somebody else, the micro yes might be, okay, get off the couch and call a friend. So you get to decide where you're at because when we're stuck, I think a lot of times we think it has to be some big, huge, large gesture, sweeping change. And it doesn't. I think getting unstuck is about just taking the smallest first step.
I think that's huge because when you can think about it from that perspective, it makes it a little easier to get off the couch than to learn Italian in one take or something like that. It's start with one thing at a time. And a lot of people struggle as creatives from having multi-passionate things they want to do. I mean, you're an actress, you're a writer, you're a love coach. What do you say to those people that are oh, you're doing too many things. You have to choose one. How do you feel about that?
It's so been my struggle, right? It's so been my struggle. And at the same time, eventually it's all kind of come together. I feel like that's when intuition becomes really, really important and getting quiet with yourself and also having a coach. Every good coach has a coach. I have a coach who helps me make those decisions, and I can sit down with him and say, okay, here are the 15 things I'm considering. What are the top 3? How do I figure it out? And I need to have support with that. So it's okay to get support with that. And it's okay to change your mind. It's perfectly okay to change your mind. That doesn't mean, because for example, I had this 15-year acting career. And I no longer audition for TV and film like I used to in Los Angeles, right? I just don't do that anymore. I still perform when I produce an in-person workshop, when I create a webinar, when I record my online courses. And at the same time, those acting skills are what make me so confident when I'm sitting one-on-one with someone. That make me able to walk into a conference and just walk up to somebody and put out my hand and say, hi, I'm Dufflyn, because I learned that wasn't something that came naturally to me. So I think I would say also that whatever you've done, it's going to add up to something and that no creative effort is ever wasted.
I love that. And talk a little bit about the connection between love and creativity.
The connection between love and creativity, which is right. The word you said was connection. And that's the thing that we need, right? When we're being creative, we're connected to source. We're connected to that life energy, that thing that's greater than us. And that's also where love comes from, or maybe what love is even. So I don't think those things are separate at all. What's important for me is to get the heck out of my own way what's important for me is that I set aside my ego and I let that thing come through me, which is, like I said before, easier said than done. It's not, that takes a lot of work sometimes for me. I don't know about anybody else, but it takes a lot of work for me to get into that place where I can just flow. But that is where love lives, right? Because it requires being authentic. You can't have intimacy without authenticity, and you can't have creativity without intimacy. So it's all connected.
I definitely think it's all connected. That's so true. And love and creativity, in a lot of ways, could be the same thing. It's a way of expressing ourselves, expressing feeling, connecting. So that all makes complete sense. And how would you define creativity in your own words?
I mean, I feel like creativity it's like that magic that comes from something outside myself. It's so hard to define creativity, and yet what it is when you feel it, right? When you feel that spark, it's that spark. It's that moment when you feel inspiration, right? Which comes from that Latin word inspire, which is full of spirit, right? So again, that's why I'm saying like, it's something that's beyond me. It's the genie in the corner, which is why it's so important for me to get out of its way.
I love that. The genie hanging out, waiting to work with you. And talk a little bit about your writing process. So people who want to write books, want to write, more. Where did you get started? How do you what's your process to write?
It's changed so much over the years. I'm sure that's true, for you and for everybody as well, if you stick with it long enough. And in the beginning, I think I just kind of, whenever I was inspired, I would jot something down. And eventually I came to see that I was often inspired right before I went to sleep or right before I woke up. So I keep a journal and a pen that works by my bedside so that when those moments come and those inspirational ideas arrive, I can capture them. But we have lives, right? And that was when I was like a teenager, and now I have a much busier life. And so I had to create some structure in order to be able to do that. And also, earn a living and live my life and get the dishes done and all of that. So what I do now is I have a schedule. I write every day from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. That's my peak time. So again, after I've meditated and exercised and had some water, I sit down at my desk and I have these 2 hours. Now, within those 2 hours, I may be writing, I may be editing, I may be submitting, I may be researching, I may be reading, but I'm doing something for my writing career. And most of the time it's writing because that's the part that I love the best, or editing. So I dedicate that time. And sometimes I'm just sitting and staring at the computer, which is perfectly fine. What I've discovered is that the process for me is about discipline. It's just about showing up, your butt in the chair, and keeping that consistent schedule. Because then when the magic comes, when the genie knocks on my door, I'm there in front of the computer and I'm able to receive it.
Yeah, I think that's so true about just showing up, and it's kind of like the gym working out. It's like getting your body ready. Like you're always in that mode at that time and you just keep showing up. It's so important with anything creative, just making space for that. And what's something you wish more people knew about finding love, whether it's self-love, loving another person? What's something you think a lot of people are missing?
The funny thing is we're all looking for love. And there's this sort of old adage of you find love when you least expect it. And I don't know if that's true for everybody. I think the thing is that it's not the same for each person. What I do think is true for everybody is that love is already there. Love is. And so it's not so much about looking for what you don't have as it is about recognizing what you do have, about Because when I was single for 12 years, Crystal, and it was a bummer. I was not happy about it. Okay. I did everything. I read all the books. I went to all the yentas, I I went to Calling in the One and Tantra and ecstatic dance and tarot card readers and psychics. And like, I did all the stuff because I was like, I don't know what's going to work, but I'm going to try it all. And I got to this certain point where I felt really desperate and really sad. And I was like, maybe that's just not meant for me. And I don't know where I read this, but someone gave me the idea that I should lean into the love that was already present in my life. And so what I did was I sent these like gratitude letters to people in my life who had loved me and shown up for me and been there for me in lots of different ways. So whether that was my best friend or a mentor or my mom. And I just told them, thank you for this and thank you for this and all of these moments that I had lived. And it made me feel really grateful. I feel like crying right now. It made me feel really grateful. And it made me realize how very much love I actually had already. And as I began to focus on that, it was like love begets love, and I became more magnetic. And it was maybe 2 years after that I was in Paris and I met my partner, Benjamin.
I think that's really beautiful. And I can totally relate to that because I think right before I met my husband, it was the same for me. I was like, I tried everything. I was like, I'm just going to love the life I have. I'm going to love my family, my friends, my job, like all this love and just be comfortable with being with yourself. And I thought that was so annoying when people would say, it's when you least expect it. I was like, that's the most annoying thing ever. But it's so true. When you start recognizing what you already have and start loving what you have, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And talk a little bit about your new memoir. And this is all about moving to Paris and finding love yourself.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this project. I've been working on it for 9 years since I met Benjamin. So it's called You Had Me at Bonjour, and it's a nonfiction narrative about leaving behind my Hollywood life and moving to Paris, even though it was a big risk. We're two people in recovery. I was not at all sure that this was going to work out, but I took the leap. And so it's kind of that story of how messy and difficult it is falling in love, and also how beautiful it is. And obviously the background of Paris doesn't hurt. So, kind of figuring it out along the way with two people who are just really unlikely. I mean, he is an unlikely hero, let me tell you. And at the same time, he is 100% my hero.
I love that. I can't wait to read it. When is it going to be out?
We haven't sold it yet. So my agent is pitching it to publishers as we speak.
Lovely. We'll be on the lookout for that and we can find out updates. And one last thing, we want to know, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
What comes to my mind when I think it was like the 7th grade. I was about 13 years old, a difficult time for everyone. I had this one teacher and I would stand up in class and ask questions and I remember this one day, I don't even remember what we were talking about. It was a history class. And I was asking too many questions. And finally he looked at me and he's like, "Are you being facetious?" And I was so angry. I got up and I walked out of the classroom because I didn't even know what facetious meant. I was like, I'm 13. I'm just trying to figure shit out, man. Like, help me. And he came to me after I sat outside the classroom. And he came to me after class and we sat down in his office. And he was like, "Dufflyn, you're very bullheaded and it can get you far in life, but it can also stand in your way." And it wasn't so much a piece of advice about what to do about that. It was the awareness that he handed me. Like, what he handed me in that moment was self-awareness. And that by becoming self-aware, I could make a choice about who I wanted to be and what direction I wanted my life to go, which is a great gift.
Yeah, I think that's definitely great advice and a great gift to be given from a young age when we're all just trying to figure it out. And I think that's a great note to end on. And where can people connect with you, find out about your coaching, your writing, and learn more?
I'm on Instagram at Dufflyn. I'm like Rumpelstiltskin. If you can spell my name, you can find me. It's Dufflyn. My website is also dufflyn.com.
Thanks so much for sharing with us today. And I can't wait to read your memoir when it comes out. I'll be on the lookout for that. And keep in touch with everybody.
Thank you, honey. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.